Everyone, welcome. This is our September call for Women IT Pros. And we're doing a bit of a reboot on the series here. We're going to really focus on talking about people's personal stories in the IT world. So today we have Wei, who's going to talk about becoming adaptable, and we're super excited about that. So a couple of housekeeping things to run through. We'll do some intros in a minute and give everybody a chance to just, kind of talk a little bit about who you are. But if in the chat window you'd like to put your social media information, we'd love to be able to connect with each other because that's one of the whole points of this. And also if there are any groups that you're going to, any events that you're going to. I know Microsoft Ignite is actually coming up in person. It's about 40 days away now, I think. So if anybody's going to be going to that, or if you're going to any online events, let us know, because also it can be kind of cool attending the online events together. Or, if you're going to be there in person, go find the other women IT pros at those events. And so we definitely have the chat window. Feel free to come off mute, especially if it's a small meeting. Just remember that we are being recorded. So, this will be for posterity on YouTube. We have a LinkedIn group for Women IT Pros. And we're definitely welcome to start up some conversations going in there. Upcoming events, the Asia Pacific group led by Sonia Cuff and Jess Dotson. They've actually got the next several months all planned out. So you can go check that out. It's posted in our LinkedIn group. And the next event for them is going to be Thursday, September 29th at noon Brisbane time, which for us translates to 7 p.m. Wednesday night. So definitely feel free to drop in on their meeting. And then we'll also have our meetup in virtual reality in AltSpace VR on Friday, September 30th. And that'll also be from 9 to 10 a.m. And you don't need a VR headset. Just show up, get your PC going, and join us there. On Eventbrite, if you go to the WITPros meetings, then you can subscribe and you can get everything that we're doing here. And then we do record the meetings, like the APAC meeting and this meeting. We don't record the AltSpace ones because that would be like trying to record a happy hour. It's just lots of free-form conversation. We do have a survey at the end, and I'll put this link in the chat window. So definitely encourage you to fill that out. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. And then I always kind of give the standard disclaimer here. It's not a Microsoft specific initiative. Wei happens to work for Microsoft. I work for Microsoft, but we welcome speakers, and we are definitely looking for other people to be speakers and to tell your IT stories about how you got here. So, this is not, not officially blessed or sanctioned. So what I want to do is actually jump back. And if you would like to introduce yourself verbally, we'll give you a chance, since we've got a small group here, just to go around and tell us, who you are, what you do, and where you're located. And then if you're not comfortable talking, in the meeting and the recording, feel free to just put it in the chat window. And the chat window is not actually recorded along with everything else. So anyone want to say hi, introduce yourself?
Sure, I will. Hi, I'm Marisa O'Neill, and I have finally made it to an IT Pros event after wanting to do so for probably over a year. And I am currently wrapping up a gig at Starbucks as a project manager, medium to large size projects, all the things that you would expect from project management. And I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, so glad to see you.
I guess I'll go next. Hey,
okay.
Kathy. This is Victoria Grempel here. I guess I'd consider myself a longer-term member of the Women IT Pros community. I'm usually based in New York, but actually today I'm in San Jose, in town for an automotive conference. I work for a female-founded, female-led ethical AI company, and we sell basically data services, data annotation, to companies who are using computer vision. So I work closely with the top automotive companies in the US. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome, so glad you're here. Anyone else want to do an intro?
I'll go. My name is Grace, and I'm new to Microsoft. and Wei kindly told me about her talk. Well, I'm a girl crush. Wei is my girl crush. So I was like, what? You're talking about what? I'm going to be there. And so I'm very excited to be here. I work in the trust and safety space. And so making platforms safe from like bad people on the internet, harassers, right? That's kind of the business I'm in. Very excited to be here and to just hear about the program more. So very nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go. My name's Catherine Skrupa. I work in Winnipeg at a financial institution. I do automation and system administration. I've been considering getting into security. And I'll post some stuff on the channel here. Still feel a little weird about attending in-person events, but I might end up going to PowerShell Summit for the first time. Or perhaps a Blue Team Summit next time in, I guess it'd be August next year.
Awesome. Yeah, in-person events, they are happening. The Ignite one is a little small one. It's going to be hybrid, so you can still do everything online. But I know that a bunch of my MVPs are doing the Workplace Ninja Summit in Switzerland in just a few days. So like, yeah, they're coming back. I know there's a lot of Office 365 and 365 stuff happening in person. So definitely if you're going to stuff, find the Women IT Pros there. And Victoria, I don't know if you're going to have Women IT Pros where you are at your meetups in San Jose.
No, I was just in town, like just a quick 24 to 48, but there wasn't any meetup here. Was that the question?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were at an event or is it just a call?
No, I'm at an event. It was an in-person self-driving event.
Okay. Cool. Anyone else? I'm not going to call in people because, don't want to put anyone on the spot.
Hi, my name is Priscilla. I'm in Southern California. I work at Patch My PC as a customer success engineer. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm glad that this exists. I think this is awesome.
Fantastic. Glad to see you. All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, again, feel free to put your information in the chat window. We would definitely love to be able to connect with each other on LinkedIn and Twitter and all of that. And I will throw mine in there in a minute. So what we're going to do today is have Wei talk a little bit about becoming adaptable. And I am fascinated to hear how she went from doing Disney theme park merchandise and SpaceX to senior technical program manager at Microsoft. So Wei, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yay, thank you. Let me press this magical button that says present in Teams and then hope it actually lets me present in Teams.
Yes, it is presenting.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to let this one extra person in. Okay, so you will notice that I do not take many things seriously. So I just want to let you know that this is a relatively informal or very casual talk. And you'll notice the way that my particular affect of communication is a little unique. So this will be fun. In any case, all right, so let's go. So do you feel like you're doing gymnastics to get through your day? Like I do all the time. Every day is a little bit different. Every day is a little bit crazy. There's always a lot of complexities, a lot of uncertainty about every day. And unfortunately, it turns out that's just kind of part of life. And so while we may not be able to control every situation, we can choose how we react to them. We can choose how we act, and then we can adapt as each stressful situation arises and build resilience so that with practice, we can handle and overcome a lot of these uncertainties in the future. And so my name is Weishung Liu. Everybody calls me Wei, and I'm here to talk to you today about adaptability. All right, so at the end of this presentation, you should, or hopefully will, have a clear definition of what adaptability is, why it's important, and you'll be able to learn ways to practice becoming more adaptable so that you can build resilience in the face of change and uncertainty. So first, I'd like to share a little bit about my journey with you, since this presentation not only highlights adaptability, but I use my own experiences as a backdrop, because hopefully some of the things that I've gone through may resonate with yours. So me personally, I grew up in the Bay Area in California. And believe it or not, I came to the University of Washington to get away from anything tech. I was like, I don't want to do STEM. I will never be in STEM, and get me out of this place, because I wanted to be an architect. Except I ended up majoring in comparative religion and industrial design instead, which, you know, is a whole different thing that happened. But believe it or not, the day after I graduated from UW, I moved to Florida for an opportunity in product management and product development to make tangible memories at Disney. Tangible memories meaning plush and dolls for Walt Disney World, Disneyland, which then led me to work on, believe it or not, industrial test and measurement tools and IoT at Fluke Corporation, Starlink and enterprise resource planning software at SpaceX. These are all very related, as you can see. A social recommendation app at a startup that's backed by Gates Ventures. And now I am not being paid to say this, like my best job ever, my favorite job, which is at Microsoft Research, where I incubate cutting edge technology. And really, I still find it really hard to believe that I've been fortunate enough to work at these amazing companies. And I genuinely believe that part of the reason why I've been able to do this is because I've been able to adapt myself in ways that helped me succeed in each of these roles. Okay, so what is adaptability? So I had to really look this up and think it through and determine what really resonated with me. And so adaptability is to be focused on a goal or fixed on a goal and flexible on the details. And it means that there's just essentially more than one way to do anything. And, you know, a great example is, so I live in Redmond, or sorry, I live in Bothell, I work in Redmond. There's probably about 100 ways that I could get to work in different routes that have different speeds. And honestly, like there's probably only one route that I mostly take. But if you think about adaptability being fixed on a goal, which is Wade needs to get to work right now, flexible on the details is being open to taking the different routes to get to work. So why is adaptability important? It's because individuals who demonstrate a competency in adaptability score higher on life satisfaction, on career satisfaction, and promotability. So, you know, if you think about it this way, similar to kind of the routes to work example I just gave you, you know, would you rather work with someone who only knows how to solve problems one way, or someone who can approach problems from multiple angles to find, you know, the right or the best route to achieve that outcome that you're looking for? So how do we become adaptable? So first we need to know that there's 3 elements of adaptability as described by Steve Zaccaro in 1999. So the first is cognitive flexibility. So the ability to use different thinking strategies and mental frameworks to approach a problem. Emotional flexibility, which is the ability to vary your approach to dealing with your own emotions and those of others. And then finally, dispositional flexibility, the ability to remain optimistic and at the same time realistic. So these are all, it sounds very straightforward when you hear it, but then in practice, there's actually quite a bit of work that I've had to do to really think this through. So let's jump into cognitive flexibility. I'd like to think of elements of adaptability in these types of flexibilities as some iconic Disney characters. So first, let's talk a little bit about cognitive flexibility. Again, ability to use different thinking strategies and mental frameworks to approach a problem. And I will frame this from the perspective away, which is, I mentioned I worked at Disney. literally drove from Seattle to Florida the day after I graduated from UW. And I had this incredible opportunity to work on plush and dolls. And I managed to own my own line of plush, which you'll see on the left. I got to go to the parks every day for free, which you'll see in the middle, because around the same time was when Up came out, and like my absolute favorite movie. Loved meeting the characters. And then on the right, I jokingly call this my diversity photo, which I was on the cover of the Eyes and Ears Disney magazine for Disney. Like I say all these things out loud, and I'm like, oh, I did that? That's weird. I feel so old. In any case, it was amazing. So for those of you who weren't totally aware, or maybe may not be aware of what happened in 2008, 2009, the Great Recession also happened. And so as much as I also wanted to stay at Disney, there was just not really a chance for me to stay there beyond 2009. So around June 2009, unfortunately, I had to leave my dream job and find something else. And, it felt like an eternity later, but it was not really an eternity. It was actually 6 years. Had a lapse. I had bounced around a few companies, specifically hardware companies. So industrial design, I worked on like physical, tangible products. I worked on tangible memories at Disney. So I focused only on hardware companies. I got married. I had a baby, and somehow I managed to squeeze an MBA in there. I jokingly refer to it as playing life on nightmare mode, and I would not recommend that to anybody. Just like maybe break it up a little bit. So in 2015, then Fluke, which is the company I was working at, was embracing its digital transformation. And I was asked to build and define features for part of its first software as a service project. And it was a great opportunity, but I spent all this time in hardware because I was gonna get back to making toys. Like toys is my happy place. Toys is amazing. And I felt like I had to stay relevant to get back to this Disney job. How could I go work on these software things? Which, by the way, it felt dirty because I was like, I'm not going to do STEM ever. And so I had to really think through, like, is this an opportunity? Or is this sort of like my dream career ending decision where I was just going to close all the doors and like be miserable? But, SaaS was a big deal at the time. So an exercise in cognitive flexibility with Pushi. So I thought through, all of the outcomes, all of the approaches, and had all these permutations for like what I could do, what I could say, how I could decide, right? There's like, yes, there's this great opportunity. I'm going to exercise my growth mindset and learn all these new skills in this area that maybe I had said no to once, but there's an option there that could be beneficial for me. No is like, hey, I'm going to just stick to this like hardware thing because I'm going to get back to Disney at some point when the stars align and, Venus is in retrograde or whatever. Or defer, which is like, this will be future ways problem, and I'm not going to think about it right now, and I'll let me in 6 months handle it. But, the most important thing is that I let myself imagine and mentally explore doing something uncomfortable and something new. Like, similar to the driving to work analogy, instead of always driving to work, in this one specific way, is it kind of uncomfortable to take the local routes and take the local streets? Probably, but it's new and maybe I find a faster route, right? So letting myself imagine and just sit with these options as opposed to, hey, this is totally not my thing. No. And so as I imagined all these things, I focused on the outcome, which is eventually I want to get back to Disney, and remain flexible on the details, which is the journey can be whatever path I want. So you could probably guess what I chose based on the next paths, the following things that I did in my career, but I decided yes, right? And why is that? And it's because at the time I was living in Seattle, which I still am, Disney actually has, a large software presence in Seattle. And so I could still achieve my goal to be back at Disney and be a cast member, but it's a different path. And, you know, was it really I want to work at Disney in toys, or is it I want to work at Disney? And honestly, it's really more like I want to work at Disney and I want to be immersed in that sort of cast member experience. So I haven't been back at Disney yet, but I got to do some really cool things up until now, which is I got to watch the Falcon Heavy demo launch when I worked at SpaceX. I got to launch a brand new website at a startup that is doing very well now. And I landed the best job ever at Microsoft Research. And it's these things I would have never predicted and never have imagined in that moment in 2015, like 29, 30-ish year old way was like, I don't know, I guess, maybe. And now, you know, hindsight is like, wow, I unlocked all of these new opportunities because I really let myself think through alternative mental frameworks and alternative approaches to solving this problem. So I would be remiss to say I'm not going to give you anything to tell you about how to really think about practicing cognitive flexibility. You know, the first one, I think I've mentioned it a couple of times with respect to the driving analogy, but think about how you would normally autopilot through stuff. And now imagine what it would be like to do it differently. Then think about a different way. Then think about a different way. And you don't even have to do it, right? You don't have to do it differently. But the fact that you're giving yourself permission to think about alternatives is actually really powerful. And also asking, you know, if you get stuck, soliciting different perspectives from trusted friends and colleagues on how they would approach solving that same task is also really beneficial. And so if you get those perspectives in, you can keep practicing on ideating new approaches until you actually feel comfortable doing something a little bit differently than you normally would. And then finally, you know, like really think about how did that feel? Was it easy? Was it hard? And am I willing to try a different route again? And, you know, a lot of adaptability or becoming adaptable is practicing, because the goal is that the more you practice these small mental exercises or behavioral changes, the more prepared you will be when you are actually faced with uncertainty and faced with the challenge, that you have that resilience to, you know, feel the discomfort and then think it through. So then next is emotional flexibility, and which is, again, the ability to vary your approach to dealing with your own emotions and those of others. And, you know, Eeyore has a very, very kind quote with respect to really thinking about emotional flexibility. So in 2020, some pretty important things happened. You know, we had racial justice protests. We had a crazy year for wildfires, especially in California. And, you know, there's this little thing called a pandemic that happened to change everything, the way we live, the way we work. And I don't actually know if we've still figured it out yet. I still haven't figured it out. But also this little tiny thing happened, which is Way started a new job at Microsoft Research also in 2020. Not nearly as big as these other kind of postcards on here, but it's a big deal for me because it's kind of scary. And so I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, when I start at a new company, a new role in a new company, I'm usually like pretty excited. I'm pretty motivated, except then a pandemic happens and I don't see anybody's legs and I'm like panicking and I'm worrying and I'm like terrified and I have a ton of anxiety. And my personal favorite, like I feel so much imposter syndrome because I'm like, oh my gosh, these people are going to know that I somehow tricked them into allowing me into their cool kids club. And oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So totally insane. But one of my first projects right after joining was to be what they call the champion for hack projects during our Hack for COVID-19 hackathon, which was probably about like 3 or 4 weeks into me trying to figure out what exactly is it that I do here. And there were over 180 projects submitted. I personally reviewed over 50 projects, and my role was to identify the most promising projects, guide them through the process, and then present them to kind of the broader leadership organization for demo day consideration. And so demo day was essentially selecting the top 10 projects that would then be presented to Microsoft senior leadership, including Satya Nadella. So, you know, no pressure. I totally know what I'm doing here 3 weeks into my new job. And so I want to introduce you to this lovely concept I learned earlier in the year, which is to name the voice in your head that says not very nice things to you, which happens to be use the same initial as your name. So my name's Wei. I decided to name my particular anxiety monster Walter. And Walter's not very nice. And Walter says some pretty, like, just not helpful things, right? Like, everything sucks. This sucks. I want to give up. You suck. You should just give up. You know, you don't know anything. And everybody can tell. Everybody can tell you are totally incompetent. And Walter said a lot to me in this moment, in these times, right? Like 4 weeks in, I can't see legs. They can't see my legs. I'm two-dimensional. I try to have cool backgrounds on Teams, but it's not really the same. I try to gesticulate a lot more so people know I'm like very happy to talk. There's all these things that I had to do just to appear like I was competent, like I knew what I was doing. But, you know, then I realized how I reacted to Walter was really important. First thing I always say, shut up, Walter. Walter says, everything sucks and you suck. I'm like, shut up, Walter. Just stop. And I, you know, I really had to work on building an awareness of my emotions, and I experienced a lot of feelings every day during that time. But it was important for me to let myself feel that. Like, I think for me, I have an, how do I put it? Like, I tend to try to compartmentalize my feelings or shove them off. And I realized that that was actually not helpful. Like, if I feel happy, be happy. If I feel sad, it's okay to be sad. But after those big feelings are over, because there does come a point in time where you're kind of like, okay, I've let it out a little bit, act decisively to resolve the issue and move on. So again, focus on the outcome, remain flexible on the details. And it was very much like, for me, important to feel, and then actually do something about it afterwards. And crazily enough, it turns out I'm not the only one who feels like she can't do stuff, who feels like she's not good at things, who feels like she's completely like incompetent. And so there are all these teams, 150 teams who I worked with, who also had their own emotions and struggles to navigate. And I spent a lot of those first few weeks listening to them and staying curious and asking questions, understanding their project goals, understanding, you know, what they needed, because each project has a different style, a different culture, which means there's no one size fits all way to work with them, to champion them. And, you know, as an example, there was a very highly autonomous team, but occasionally they needed Wei the blocker remover, which is like, Wei, this is in the way and we really need your help. Okay. Or there was a team that always had all these ideas. And at some point, you know, you actually kind of have to commit to working on something if you're going to present something in a hack project to our senior leadership team. So they needed somebody to really focus them. And then there was like this self-contained, super collaborative team, and they're really great. But occasionally they just kind of needed me to show up and be like, you are doing a good job. You guys are awesome. And to really like prop them up, right? And so depending on who I was working with, I learned to call on a different version of me. And by, you know, really understanding and managing my feelings about this, and then connecting with the emotions of the teams who I worked with, 4 out of the 10 teams that presented to senior leadership were teams that I had personally championed and put forth. So but the thing is, I didn't know any of the tech behind what they did. I still can't really tell you, but I know that they were doing some really impactful things, and they needed a different version of me to help them get through to the finish line. And I'm so proud of them. So how do we really kind of think about growing emotional flexibility? When you're feeling strong emotions, acknowledge, be aware of them, and then let yourself feel it and time box it and consciously move on. If you are familiar with the app Headspace or Calm, they have great examples of kind of mindfulness and meditation and kind of what they call noting the feeling, sort of like letting it pass by. Like it's almost like you're watching the traffic of your emotions. And you're like, yep, I feel really bad about that. And then letting it come by. And when it comes to really recognizing the emotions of others, then it's try to consciously speak for no more than 40% of the conversation. Focus on observing the communication style of your conversation partner. Are they focused on data and details? Are they quiet and thoughtful? Are they like, wait, and like gesticulate all the time and like have really like excitable voice? And really take notice of that, because then in your follow-up conversations, you can try and work on matching the pace of that individual's communication style. And sometimes you'll notice if you match them a little bit more, your conversation partner is more amenable and open to you, to what you might want to be suggesting, to what you're having, what you're, trying to work through together. And so, practice listening, observing, matching, pacing, and eventually, again, I mentioned it with cognitive flexibility, it's a lot of practice. And so like Kathy, for example, I see you struggle sometimes with observing someone's communication style. It's okay, because if you focus on, let's say, I'm going to consciously not speak for more than 40% of this conversation, and I'm going to listen and I'm going to internalize what this person is doing, then I think the sort of listening and internalizing piece is really important. And you'll be able to say, oh, this person actually is, super analytical and they only care about data. And how I communicate with them is being data driven and being short or terse, right? Some people are like that. But I think what might help, for example, is time boxing how much you talk, so that you can really watch and listen to how, this other person you're interacting with or group of people you're interacting with talk. Some of my favorite things to do is, when I'm in a large group setting, like a group meeting, I probably talk for like 1% of the time. And I will just watch and listen to everybody else. And, do people interrupt each other? How do they talk over each other? How do they, do they use I words? Do they say we? How do they represent their work? Because I think that's also a great way to observe communication styles and how people think. Okay, last but not least, dispositional flexibility, which is the ability to remain optimistic and sad at the same time. Sorry, not sad. I'm looking at sadness. Don't be sad at the same time. Be optimistic and at the same time be realistic, which sadness says, I'm positive that you'll get lost in there. Also, great movie. If you haven't seen Inside Out, definitely watch Inside Out. Okay, so believe it or not, when I first put this presentation together, I had a different example in here. But this happened to me about 3 weeks ago. So I was informed on a Friday that my manager is leaving the company effective immediately, and I was asked to take on their role. And yep. So this is you are going to live my example that I'm currently experiencing right now. And so what I didn't understand what I was saying yes to, but I said yes, because I was like, wow, this is good for me, right? Cognitive flexibility, this is great. All the opportunities, think of all the things I did, can do, open doors. So what I had to do, manage a team of PMs, one is who is starting on Monday. So this person was going to walk into the building and see me and not the person that they were expecting. And the person they were expecting doesn't look anything like me. And I don't look anything like them. So surprise. The second was run rhythm of business and operations for our group. I still don't really know how to do that. I'm trying really hard, but sweaty pushy. And then finally, you're going to lead a cross-lab strategic program and engage with lab senior leaders. And Pusheen right there kind of just freaked out is really a really good example of that. I have never done any of these things before at this scale. All the things that I just talked about that I worked on, I made stuff. I love making stuff. None of these things is really about making stuff. It's making different types of stuff. And like, phew, it's been an interesting 3 weeks so far. And, you know, one of the things that I really had to do was to keep channeling this quote at the top, which is my former manager left big shoes to fill. And while I'll do my best, I expect I'll go through a few bumps along the way. And the last part of this is, and I need your support and your patience as we work on this transition. And that has been something that I've had to repeat a lot to a lot of people who expect, you know, me to just jump right in there. But before exercising my dispositional flexibility, I had to leverage my cognitive flexibility first. You know, I was worried that the abruptness of the change meant that no one would accept me because my manager is an incredible leader, an incredible person. And, you know, Walter was like, there, you're going to suck at this. And, you know, I had to spend time ideating and trying multiple ways to be accepted with an equal seat at the table. You know, I had a lot of I have been having lots of one-on-ones with stakeholders. I have worked really hard on saying, you know, not just being that 1% of time voice, but then I've like bumped it up to 5%. I've bumped it up to 10% to try and say like, hey, I actually have an opinion and it matters and I want you to hear it. I've been thinking about different frameworks to approach problems. Like I went back through all these different, you know, like prioritization frameworks and conversation frameworks and how do I do these things? And the last one is really important for me, which is really hard for me, is asking for help. This is the most uncomfortable thing for me to do, which is, again, I expect I'll go through a few bumps along the way, and I need your patience and support as I go through this transition. And to actually demonstrate that vulnerability and ask for help is probably one of the most powerful things I've done for myself in these last 3 weeks. I also had to tap into my emotional flexibility because how will I ever do this as well as my manager did? I have been sitting with an enormous amount of anxiety, a lot of anxiety. And, you know, again, shut up, Walter. Observing and listening to my new stakeholders has been also really important. Like, what is their area of concern? What can I continue in terms of what worked well? And then actively working on areas to improve. Because I realized, you know, like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I can't do this. Actually, there's a whole village of people, again, who I ask for help, who want to help me and want to see me succeed. And also thinking about, you know, like, I am not going to be my manager. I am not that person. I am Wei. I can only be Wei. But how do I be the best Wei in this position so that I don't completely undo all the great work that has already been done, but I build upon that? Also, shut up, Walter. So now let's talk about dispositional flexibility, which is optimistic while remaining realistic. I mentioned this before. I am not the same person as my manager. I am Wei, and there are certain ways that I do things that may be better, may be worse, but I cannot just suddenly transform myself into an entirely new person. This one's really hard for me to think through. I will succeed in this role eventually. And the eventually piece is really important. Like, I am 3 weeks into this and I am not very good at it. And that is okay, because I will eventually kick butt at this. optimistic, realistic optimism. And so I need to give myself a lot of grace. Hello, my friend Grace, in this interim transitional period to just say, hey, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to not be perfect at the start. And there are so many people who want to help me succeed, but I actually have to ask for the help. I have to be realistic about what I can do and what I can't do, what I am saying yes to, which means what am I saying no to? And then actually saying that, saying, hey, I can do this, but I can't do those things right now because you asked me to do 3 really big things that even Pusheen feels is absolutely insane to just dive right into. So I will focus on spending this time to listen and learn before I wade or possibly dive face first into the deep end, because this is the realistic thing that I can do right now. I can't just pick up and do everything that my manager did without understanding the context and the reasons why I'm doing these things. And again, it's okay. And that I have to tell myself at least 5 times a day. Like, I sound all like competent and stuff when I say this out loud, but like I have to spend like at least 5 minutes every day at various points of the day, be like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to do this. I will succeed in this role eventually. Shut up, Walter. So again, focus on the outcome, remain flexible on the details, which is I will succeed in this role. I will do a good job eventually. But right now, I'm going to go on this probably long and winding journey of getting there. And it's okay because I'm focused on the outcome. I'm focused on this destination that I'm eventually going to get to. But the path that I take may not be very linear. And that is how I am being adaptable in this situation. So, practicing dispositional flexibility. Next time you encounter uncertainty, pause and acknowledge the bad situation, which for me was like, you're not even giving me a chance to grieve the loss of one of my favorite managers, and you're already asking me to fill in their shoes. But then I had to visualize that uncertainty towards building a better future. Like, what am I unlocking for myself? What can I see that doing this will help me towards, which is I didn't really aspire to be a manager before, but I actually think it's really neat. And it's really cool to really try and help people grow their career here. I have access to a lot more information. I get to see how the sausage is made. I don't really want to see how the sausage is made, but there's kind of an important way to see how businesses are run that I didn't really get exposure to before. I don't know what that buys me yet in terms of like future opportunities, but I recognize that this is a skill set that I'm learning and that I'm understanding, and that I will eventually, put in my toolkit of things that will make me successful. And then, focus on the goal or desired outcome from this uncertainty, right? Imagine the best case. So best case for me, I'm going to be awesome at this role. Everybody's going to love me, and I'm going to do way better than anybody else does. And now imagine the likely or realistic case, which is it's going to take me a while to be good at this job. And I'm going to really, I'm going to have to really work on it, but I'm going to try really hard. And so what would it take to make the likely case turn into the best case? For me, it's asking for help. It's saying yes to things, which means I'm saying no to other things. And am I willing to put in that effort? 100% yes. It is deeply uncomfortable for me, but I'm going to do it. But also acknowledge, like, if the best case is not worth the effort, acknowledge that it's okay to walk away from this opportunity. So for me, as an example, we'll just pretend like, hey, Wei really doesn't want to lead this big old strategic thing with multiple lab leaders. But I'm going to try it, right? I'm going to try it for a year. And then I'm going to determine really for myself, is this really what I want to keep doing? Do I really want to do this? And then have those conversations with my manager, with my skip, and say, hey, I tried it and I really just don't want to do this. And I would like to be, working on something else. So dispositional flexibility doesn't mean you're supposed to plow through everything. It's It's really internalizing. Does doing this make sense to you? Is, you know, if I'm being optimistic about this, I could totally kick butt at this job. Being realistic about it, there's probably a lot of stuff I don't really like about it. And how do I think about my best case, think about the likely case, what is the gap there? And how do I determine for myself and for me only, right? Is this worth the effort? So finally, because I want to leave some time for us to talk, we talked about, this is just my conclusion slide, which is adaptability is being fixed on a goal, knowing where your destination is, and being flexible on the details. What is the path that I'm going to take? And understanding that there are lots and lots of paths to get to my destination. Adaptability is a key predictor of life satisfaction, career satisfaction, and promotability because you're building resilience in the face of change and uncertainty. We talked about cognitive flexibility, emotional flexibility, dispositional flexibility, with, you know, examples from Way's life. And this one's really important is you're not going to be, if you're not familiar, if you're not really good at being adaptable yet, and the reason why I say is yet is because the more you practice and have these positive experiences with change, even little ones, which is just, I'm going to imagine doing something differently than I normally would when I autopilot through stuff, you will become more skilled at adaptability. You will be learning and building that muscle to be an adaptable person. Like, I mean, I went from industrial design comparative religion to leading a team and working on strategic programs in Microsoft research. And frankly, I still don't know how to build an artificial intelligence model, but you know, everybody else does. But that's not my strength. I'm adaptable and I'm good at it. So here are some resources for you to reference. And yes, Bridget, I will share the deck with everybody. So you can also have access to these links, which give you some tips and tricks on, you know, how to exercise adaptability and the 3 types of flexibility. And Headspace and Brene Brown podcast, by the way, are like 2 of my favorite things to listen to. Like I go kayaking and I will just listen to Brene Brown podcast like the whole time. She is lovely. I adore her, and she, like, the latest conversation, not the latest, but she had a conversation with Simon Sinek about the Infinite Game, and so good, so good. So finally, I want to say thank you for going on this journey with me and being here to listen to my story, my very meandering and winding story, which hopefully is not done yet. I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn, but I want to leave you all with this GIF, not GIF, GIF of Pascal from Disney's Tangled, because he is the most adorable little chameleon ever. Be adaptable like Pascal. Thank you for your time.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow.
Hopefully this was useful for you all and resonated somewhat with some of your own personal experiences. I think everybody at some point feels nervous about starting a new job. It's harder to start a new job when nobody has legs. You can't even see, you know, most of their lower half. Like me right now. I promise you I have legs. I don't have like cyborg legs or an elephant body. It's actually like legs. So anywho, we have 8 minutes left. If anybody has any questions or anything you'd like to talk about, I'm here to answer whatever you want, including things that I didn't explicitly talk about.
Come off mute, type in the chat. I did want to ask Maurice, had asked about examples of the frameworks, and it looks like you had those in the links.
Yep.
Yep. So you got those.
And I will share even more. Happy to.
I think I'm going to print out the realistic optimism slide and put that up in my home office.
I was just going to get it tattooed on my arm so I could just look at it.
Yeah, I will succeed in this eventually.
Eventually is the key word here. Like, I think I personally have a desire to like be perfect on day 1. And then it's been a real tough journey to realize that I cannot be perfect on day 1. And accepting that actually nobody else expects me to be perfect on day 1 either. Weird. Is this just all in my head? Yeah, a little bit.
Well, and if I'm expecting that of myself, what is that also saying about my expectations for other people? And how reasonable is that?
Yep.
Like, even if I wouldn't say I expect them to be perfect.
Yep.
Come off mute.
I
Speak.
I just want to say, Kathy, thank you so much for coordinating all of this. I think this is like easily one of the top sessions events that we've done. Super interactive, super helpful. And again, I know we were just talking about like we haven't quite like figured out the pandemic yet, and like I still find like these groups are my happy place. Like to see you all, familiar places, and hear from professionals in the world like this is still, I think, very helpful and amazing to be part of the group. So I just wanted to say just an overall thank you. And it was really wonderful hearing your story, Wei. Really inspiring.
Thank you.
We are not alone. Even if we don't have legs, we're not alone.
Yeah, if
And
you
Women
don't
IT
live
Pros
on
has always
the
been virtual.
if you don't live on the West Coast, it's feel kind of disconnected from other people because the people you meet, the groups are smaller and whatnot. So yeah, a lot of the virtual meetings, it makes it a lot more accessible to meet up with other people like you and other user groups too. Yeah.
I had a question to Wei. Wei, can you talk a little bit more about matching communication style? Oftentimes that's something I personally struggle with. And especially if it's like you have a few people who are dominating larger conversations, for example, like when it comes to matching communication style, what are your best practices kind of more in a larger group setting where you need to insert yourself? Just curious to kind of hear about that.
Yeah, so for me, I personally, so I come off super outgoing and friendly and I will talk, and actually I don't talk that much, except, when I'm asked to present, then I have to talk the whole time. So a lot of times what I do, and especially, Grace, I'm assuming this is in reference to like online meetings or video meetings, is because there are sometimes people who will take over or dominate conversations. Like I mentioned earlier, like people who just interrupt each other, will just talk over each other and just want to keep talking. And sometimes it feels like they just like listening to their own voice. I actually will use the raise hand feature in Teams. I think Zoom might have it as well, but there's, for me, I have found that to be exceptionally helpful to, because I don't want to match interrupting others. I feel like that's actually kind of rude. And not beneficial to a conversation. But I will use the raise hand feature, and then when I am recognized, I will be very clear about what I want to say, right? Because the raise hand feature also gives me a moment to prepare what I want to say in the most impactful way possible. And so it could be matching, and so it's not to say like don't match the interruptions, and then don't match the like I'm being like I'm being all like harsh and whatever, but it's more like raise your hand and then say what you want to say that will be most impactful to your audience. And in that case, it might be like they are super data driven. And so you will bring in, a data driven example or a data driven comment that says based on this, therefore this, they should be able to listen to that. Or if, they're very animated and very, very engaged people, in that case, matching will need to be like, you need to bring a little bit more energy to what you say. But if you're going to use that raise hand feature instead of interrupting everybody and things like that, for me, it's been really helpful to just kind of match the energy in the room, the virtual room. And that has helped me land messages.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully that's helpful.
That's very helpful. Very
Okay.
helpful. Thank you.
And I just put a link in the chat. Our December 2021 call was Effective Storytelling with Data by Natasha Nacho Chernesky. And if you need some help doing the data-driven examples. Cool. Got 2 minutes. Anything else? Anyone else?
Thank you for being here, by the way, like
Yes.
for taking an hour out of your life to listen to me ramble on about my life. That is lovely. And I'm so grateful for that because, you know, even though I talk about like all the things that I've done, I don't actually feel like it's a very big deal. And the fact that you've given me an hour of your time is incredible. So thank you for that.
Well, and also thank you for you to give yourself the hour of the time to come together with other people, because it's really easy to just kind of like keep going and doing other stuff. And you know, hopefully we create these so that you can come here and kind of get some refill for yourself and some time to think about things and learn some stuff. Yeah. And it doesn't have to end. Someone said, I don't want this to end, but you know, we'll stop the recording in just a minute here, but we can hang on for a few minutes after the recording. And if there was something you wanted to say, or if you want to, you know, network a little bit, feel free to throw your information in the chat window. Anyone who joined after you posted won't see it because that's how the privacy thing works now. But yeah, I will wrap by saying, Wei, thank you so much. And I don't know if Jen is still here, but Jen is the one who said, oh, you've got to meet Wei. She's awesome. And I totally agree here. So we've got our little Wei fan club going. So this will be posted. This will be posted on YouTube as soon as I can get the recording all set up there. And, you know, definitely encourage you to watch it. We will have our next meeting on the second Friday in October. So definitely come on back for that. We'll have another, you know, wonderful Woman IT Pro talking about stories. And if you're interested in being one of the storytellers, let me know, because we, you know, we all have a story to share, and there's value in everybody's story. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, and I'll stop the recording, but hang on after for the networking, because that's where all the fun is.
Thank you so much.